Hello, my loves. Welcome to another episode of the Becoming You podcast. And in case you're wondering, you're watching this on a YouTube video and you're wondering why on earth I'm in bed, it's because I'm still in quarantine with COVID. So, this week's episode, I wanted to talk to you about 10 facts that I need you to know about your inner critic. And this discussion is timely because enrollment is now open for Crush Your Inner Critic, my 12-week program to help women whose negative self talk and self criticism is really getting in the way of living their best life. If that's you, check out the program. The link to the program and all the details of what we will cover and how we will transform your inner critic is all in the detail, is in the link in the show notes. So let's get started. For me, my inner critic has been a huge part of my life, and it continues to be so because I grew up with believing that I had to listen to my inner critic, and I formed my inner critic as a way of protecting myself. So, fact number one is that the inner critic is formed to protect you. Even though today it's probably causing you a lot of distress and pain and it's making you suffer because that voice is relentless and it never ever lets up, you formed it when you were younger as you were experiencing painful things in your life. For me personally, my inner critic is ironclad. It still has a very strong hold on me in the sense that I have worked through a lot of the loudness and the intensity of, when self doubt creeps up. I have worked through those layers, but the inner critic has many, many, many layers. And the more you heal, you will always find a deeper layer of how this inner critic shows up in your life. So I continue to work on it. And I formed my inner critic because, a lot of painful experiences happened in my life. I've talked about this very publicly, where I used to be teased for my looks. And I went to a school in an area where, people, the majority religion was different to the religion that me and my parents believed in. So I got bullied for that. And then a lot of things that you normally wouldn't associate with forming the inner critic also happened. So, for instance, we moved a lot um, when I was young. And every time we moved, there was obviously instability and insecurity created within me as a child. And so the inner critic would develop to protect me from uncertainty. Um, and we also, faced a lot of financial problems growing up. So I never knew like whether my parents would be okay financially or not, and that was a very real fear in our lives. They talked about it a lot. It was a very obvious problem in our everyday life. So my inner critic, the way it protected me was telling me, don't hope for those things. Things don't work out. So anytime I wanted a toy or a new set of clothes or a birthday party, those were things a part of me, the little child in me would hope for. But more often than not, I never ever got those things that I wanted. I mean, I'm not blaming my parents, they were doing the best they can. But my inner critic was developed during those times. My heart was broken, or I was disappointed, or I got my hopes up. And then I realized that I wasn't going to get the thing that I was hoping for my birthday. And then I would have to do triage, as people in the medical world would call it, to patch up that heart that had been broken. So, I just thought all of these experiences were par for the course, that everybody grew up with these kind of things and you just patch up and move on. Yes, we all have these many heartbreaks in our lives. And we all just put it down as normal. It is normal. It is a part of your life journey. But what is not normal is that we never go back to address it and heal it. And what is not normal is that we assume that it doesn't affect our life today. And it does in so many ways. So, fact number one is that the inner critic was formed by you essentially to protect you. To protect you from what? To protect you from heartbreak, rejection, disappointment. Fact number two is that the inner critic's job The only job that it exists to do is to control you. Okay? When these heartbreaks happened in the course of your life, those things were out of your control, right? Other people's behavior, other people's actions, things not going your way, your heart getting broken, all of those things were out of your control. And so the inner critic, by protecting you, is essentially about learning to control life. So it starts to whisper things in your mind like, don't hope for that. You can't do that. Who do you think you are? What are people going to think of you? See, all of those kinds of things that your inner critic says, the ultimate intention is really to control you, to control your actions so that you don't put yourself out there at risk of being hurt. Your inner critic does not have any control over the external world. It can only control you through its narrative. So the inner critic maintains its survival, its existence, by telling you how to protect yourself. And it wants to protect you because it wants to control you, right? It wants to control the outcome of certain things. Which takes me to point number 3. Your inner critic tries to predict the future based on your past, right? Again, going back to the whole control thing and wanting more certainty and stability in your life, right? The inner critic does not like unpredictability. It doesn't like things that have never been tried before. It doesn't like any situation where it's not able to predictably, it's not able to tell you, you can't predict the outcome, right? Which is why when we try new things and we fail, your inner critic goes, see, I told you not to do that. You look like a fool. And it does that loop so that the next time you're going to think 3 times, 5 times, 10 times before you take any risk, in the hopes that you don't take that risk again. And what the inner critic is doing is it's trying to predict future outcomes based on your past. Right? The inner critic thinks it knows it all because certain things have gone a certain way in the past. And so this is how we remain stuck in our life, because we are not able to take a radically new step towards our future because our inner critic says that I don't have any data here to predict an outcome that is in your favor based on what's happening in the past. And so a lot of us give in to that evidence and we decide, yeah, that's probably not going to work out for me. And we never take a chance on ourselves or something new or something radically different than what's being shown to us as this works. That's why so many of us are terrified of making leaps, of making choices that no one that's gone ahead of us have never made. Once someone's done it, we have a little bit more courage. Especially once someone that looks like us has done it, we have even more courage. But if we are ever the first one to lead the way, our inner critic is the loudest. That is why we admire people that have done something so radically different, because we go, wow, I would never be able to do that. Yes, you will. You absolutely will. That person who did that radically different thing, they had just as many fears as you did. And their inner critic was probably just as loud. The only difference between them and you is that they decided to go ahead and do it anyway and didn't listen to the inner critic. Okay? Which takes me to my 4th fact, is that your inner critic masks the truth of who you are. Right? We start to believe that we are incapable, unworthy, not deserving, lazy, unproductive, procrastinator. We believe that those are who we actually are, and we believe them to be true. Yes, those might be some of your traits, and that might be your present behavior, but that doesn't encapsulate all of who you are. If let's say, Sally, if I was to come to Sally and ask her who she was, she might be like, well, I'm not very successful, I'm lazy, I'm a mom, I'm a teacher, like whatever, right? Like I'm a teacher. She might be identifying herself with the role she plays and her personality traits. But the fact is that as humans, we are beyond our physical things. We are beyond our achievements. We are beyond the tangible things we have accomplished in this life. And this is when you get into the topic of spirituality. Like, who are you beyond that? Because there is wholeness to you, there's inherent wholeness and unlimited potential within you, right? But because your inner critic is so loud, you never ever let yourself tap into that space often enough. We have glimpses of it sometimes, maybe when we're praying, maybe, when we're in a meditation, but we don't let ourselves believe that that wholeness is actually bigger than our imperfections and our shortcomings. We might flip-flop between those two worlds of believing I'm unlimited potential, I am divinity, but most of us default to our humanness. And our inner critic makes sure by its talking constantly, incessantly, that we stay in the world of believing our limitations and our very humanness. But the more we can, turn down the volume on that inner critic and tap into more of that divinity, the more we'll start to believe that we already have everything it takes, that we are perfect and we are whole. Number 5, I believe when I do these lists, like most of my podcast episodes, it's a lot of lists because that's how my brain works, right? Top 10 things to do this, or top 7 reasons you need to know this. And I know my audience love it, but when I'm doing and recording the podcast, I always lose track of the number that I'm on. So I apologize. I believe we're on number 5. Just know that your inner critic is just a habitual way of thinking. And this brings me to my example. So in our house, it's built in a way where we can go from my kitchen to, like, you go around the pantry, you go to the entrance of the house, and then the powder room is over there. But you can also make it to the powder room from the kitchen through the dining room. So it's like this loop in our house, okay? And we've decided to change the location of where we keep our dog's crate, Cosmo's crate. Cosmo's crate used to be in the informal living area, like where we, eat breakfast, hang out in the kitchen, where we watch TV and things like that. There's an area that we used to house it there. But recently we've decided that he's going to move into the dining room because we don't use the dining room for dining. But the dining room is used by my son to play his computer games. We have a computer on the table, and there's a drum set there. It's like a catch-all, all-purpose room. Unfortunately, it's not my choice, but that's what the family voted on. And so we bought these gates to cordon off the dining room into the kitchen, and then bought another set of gates to cordon off the dining room into the powder room area. And so my brain is so wired to go to the powder room through the dining room that now with the gate is up, I can't do that. I have to go the long way around the front of the house into the powder room. And I swear to you, I forget in like 10 seconds, I forget that gate is there. And I look into the dining room to get to the powder room, and I'm like, oh, that's right. The gate is there. I can't jump over the gate. I have to go around the long way. And it just like amazed me that it's how long it's taking my brain to rewire the fact that I have to go a specific way to the powder room. And there is a point in this, I swear, just because this is learned behavior, right? Like, I taught myself the shortest, most efficient way to go to that powder room. And now I have to reteach my brain on how to go about it another way. And it's taking time. I still default to wanting to go to that powder room in the shortest, most efficient way, which is the dining room, until I catch myself 3 seconds into that walk and I'm like, oh, that's right. This way is blocked. I have to go a different way. Your inner critic voice is exactly like that. It is wired in so deep. It is wired in so deep that as soon as, you make a mistake, or things don't go your way, or you mess up, whatever, right? Your inner critic, it's learned behavior. It just kicks in right away, and it tells that narrative of course you're not going to be able to do this. Things like this don't happen to people like you. We are always disappointed. Things never work out for us. This is all learned habitual thinking, right? And it is going to take intention to change that narrative. It is going to take some work. It is going to take a high level of awareness, and it's going to take support, right? And it's going to take a lot of healing. And I mean healing because this takes me to fact number 6, is that your inner critic's voice is learned, right? You are not born into this world with the inner critic's voice. You weren't birthed that way. It is layers and layers of conditioning that we need to unwind, that we need to unravel, right? And as you learn to loosen the grip that it has on you, the unconditioned you, the you that has not been trained to berate yourself, to judge yourself, to criticize yourself, the unconditioned version of you then starts to shine through. And that unconditioned version of us is light, is hopeful, is joyful, is alive, and it's open and gentle and kind and compassionate, right? And this takes me to number 7, is that the inner critic's voice is actually not your voice at all. It is the collective voices of people that you have heard throughout your life that have pained you in some way, or they have said well-meaning things, but you have taken it and formed your own beliefs based on that. For instance, if you always got patted on the back by your parents, let's say, for a job well done, or you got celebrated because you did things perfectly, or you got people told you how, like, what a good girl you are, right? These are all like actually really well-meaning things meant to encourage you and show you love. But if that is the only time that you got validated, loved, and recognized for performing, right, for performing tasks, for being productive, if that's the only time you got valued, if you never got valued for just playing, right, if you never got valued for a great imagination, if you never got valued for failing, we start to believe that my worth here in life, like what I'm valued for, my purpose in life, is to be productive. The more productive I am, the more love I receive. You form that belief as a child, for sure. I am I am loved when I am well behaved with my parents. I am loved when I follow the rules, right? So no wonder your inner critic pipes up and says, the minute you think about breaking the rules, your inner critic says, don't do that. That's not like you. What will others think if you do that? That's so out of your personality, right? Your inner critic pipes up because it has taken on the collective voices of what your caregivers, the people you loved and you wanted, craved attention and love from, how they gave you love, right? So your inner critic starts to form these frameworks for how you need to show up in the world, conditioning, in order to be valued and loved. And so we start to become a conditioned version of ourselves, and we forget who we truly are on the inside. And as we grow as adults, our light starts to dim because we keep trying to fit ourselves into a box of these conditions. And our soul and our intuition is saying, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't fit right. And we can't understand why we wake up unhappy every day, because we've done all the things, we've checked all the boxes, we followed all the rules. I was a good girl and I did all of it. Why am I not happy? Why do I feel so lost? It's because you are disconnected from your unconditional self. The self that would have been if it had not listened, and changed by all the other voices in the world. I believe that we all come into this life pure and whole and feeling worthy, right? And then we go through the formative years where all of that gets knocked out of us because of life experiences. And I believe when we have these existential crises, in our 30s, in our late 30s, usually that's what I started, in our early 30s to late 30s to 40s, right? We have this existential crisis where we wake up as moms with our lives and we're like, this is not what I signed up for. Like, what is happening? I'm not happy. right? We wake up with this existential crisis of, what is my life's purpose? Do I even matter? What am I doing with my life? I don't know whether I can live this way for the next 40 years. When we are hit with those questions, and when those questions become so painful that then we start searching for answers, it then leads to our healing. It leads to the doorway to our deepest healing, which then leads us back to becoming the unconditional version of ourselves when we were babies, right? I don't think we'll ever get back to that. Maybe we will, but you certainly begin the process of unraveling, letting go of so many conditioning and so many layers, so that you can get back to that joyful, alive, pure, whole version of you. I truly believe that is the purpose to life. That's why we all come into this life, right? And obviously accomplish and impact the world, but through your healing, you will inevitably impact the world. Maybe the world sounds too overwhelming for you, but you will definitely impact the world that's, your world, which is your children, your spouse, your parents. I cannot tell you how much healing within our own family relationships have occurred because I chose to take this radically different path, right? I am so much closer to my children. And there are times in my life where things might not be especially like, you know, easy and flowy in life. Like, in fact, right now, I'm not feeling super happy, right? I'm going through some stuff. I don't know what this stuff is. I just know the stuff feels heavy. And I'm going through certain things in life, and I'm not particularly like, oh, happy and joyful, and life is fantastic. But, but, even during these heavy times, I have the ability to appreciate life. And that's, I think, all we are looking for, right? Not, I think, on the surface level, we all just want to be happy all the time, right? I just want to be happy. Yes, we all desire that, but I feel that's very surface level because life is life, right? It throws challenges at us all the time. And unfortunately, I think most of us can only appreciate the super good things in life when we go through the super tough times. So as you guys know, like I've been, you know, having COVID for the last like week and 2 days. And do you know what I've missed the most? Is the hugs from my children and my husband. I'm a very touchy feely person, and I desperately miss hugs and kisses from my family. Yes, I always loved receiving hugs, but now, because I've been deprived of it for about 10 days, that first hug from my children, oh my gosh, is it going to taste so much sweeter? Right? And I was wondering about this the other day, and I was like, why is it as humans, it takes the darkness and the heaviness in order for us to appreciate the joy and the lightness in life? Right? But that's just how we are wired. That's just life. And that's another thing about life that I appreciate is the contrast. And I never would have been able to appreciate that without working on my healing. Right? It's because I've healed, not healed, that sounds like it's in the past. It's because I continue to do the healing work that I'm starting to appreciate the subtleties and the nuances that comes from living a rich, fulfilling, purposeful life. Yes, there will always be struggles, but how can we find the joy in between the moments that we struggle? Because your inner critic will have you believe that struggle is all there is. Your inner critic will not let you take your eyes off of your problems because, again, it's about control. It's about fear. It's about maintaining fear. And your inner critic, right? If you were ever to feel at peace with life and with yourself, that's you dismantling the role of the inner critic. Your inner critic can't handle that because its very survival is maintained by making you focus on the problems and what's not going right in life, and how you are the one that causes the problems, and and how you'll never be able to fix it. Okay, so I think we're on number 8. So your self-critical thoughts, your negative self-talk, creates separation from the rest of the world, right? How often does your self-talk make you feel like you are broken, that you should be ashamed of yourself, that you ought to, like, that you're alone, that you're unworthy, that something's seriously wrong with you? It makes you believe that you are the only one feeling and going through what it is that you're going through, that you are broken. I even faced this myself today. Like, what is wrong with me? I still have those kind of conversations. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I the one who's always struggling? Your inner critic leads you to believe that you're the only one, right? Which is so funny. And my mentor said this beautiful thing. She goes, your inner critic makes you feel unique in the most painful way. It never, how wonderful would it be if we can tap into a higher self and get that same message? How wonderful would it be if your higher self was like, you are so divine, you are so unique, there's no one out there like you. And coming from a place of love, right? Instead of your inner critic comes from a place of pain and says you ought to be so ashamed of yourself, that there is no one else in the world like you suffering right now, that no one else faces these issues, right? It makes you believe you're unique in the most shameful, painful way. So it creates separation, right? It creates separation because the less alone we feel, the less we judge ourselves and others. The more connected we feel, the more joyful we feel. Like, think about that. Anytime you felt alone, how has that made you feel? Versus anytime you felt like, I'm getting the help I need, there are people here to support me, how have you felt? So separation causes pain, support helps us feel loved. And which eventually brings me to the last one, right? Which is love heals. Love is the medicine. The inner critic was built on the illusion that you are lacking, you're unworthy, you're insufficient, you're inadequate, right? That you don't have what it takes. And it tries to get you to do more, think more, work harder in order to fill that pain and that suffering. But what we all need instead is love, right? We need to learn to accept ourselves the way we are. We need to learn to accept that we do have the power to change our situation and our pain, that we are capable of healing our wounds. And the inner critic will make you believe that you need to live from a place of closing your heart space. It says, do not expose yourself. Don't be gentle. Don't be compassionate. Don't be kind to yourself, because it doesn't want you to get your heart broken, right? It doesn't want you to feel the hope and then have it taken away. It would rather you experience suffering because of a lack of hope, rather than let you believe and become hopeful and you not achieve your goal. Does that make sense? Like, they're both painful things. Living with this idea that I'm not enough, and then let's say you go through the process of healing and you get to a place of starting to believe I am worthy, I'm deserving, I am enough, and then you go for it, right? Whatever it might be. And then you don't make it, right? But you were a lot further than you were, right? Maybe you don't make that promotion. Maybe you don't, find the love of your life, whatever it might be. Your inner critic will have you believe that it is better to stay where you are and believe that you're not enough than try to go for it and fail. So it keeps you, again, it's all about protection. But what is essentially happening is when you tell the inner critic to step aside and you decide to go for it, you're allowing love into your heart. You're allowing your desires to be nurtured and blossom. And you are allowing healing to happen, and you give yourself the opportunity to shed the layers of the conditioning. So even if you don't make it, you have made huge strides. So that the next time you go for it, it will happen. Or maybe it's the 10th time, or maybe it's the 50th time, right? But at least in one of those options, you continue to go towards your goals. Whereas in the other option, you just stay where you are. Okay, so I think this was 10 facts. I stopped counting after a while. So I hope you found this helpful. And if everything that I'm saying today, you've been leaning in, saying, yes, yes, this is me, this is resonating, I invite you to check out the program, Crush Your Inner Critic. As I said in the beginning, it's a 12-week program. I am so proud of this signature program that I have created for women like you whose negative self-talk is really preventing them from shining their light and stepping into their potential in this lifetime. It is time for you to unclip your wings and spread them and fly and make an impact in this world. I know that there's so much potential within you that you have been suppressing and suffocating for the fear of failure. And this program will really help you unleash that. And it would be my honor to lead you through this program. There is so much support that you have built, that I have built into this program, that there is no option here for failing in any way, shape, or form. I know that if your inner critic is really, really loud, one of the biggest fears that we have is, what if I don't do this right? What if I'm the only one this doesn't work on, right? What if I don't have the time to do it, right? I have put in so many checks and balances that you're not going to get left behind. There's even a graduation party at the end of the 12 weeks. And there is so much support to help you heal your inner critic. And I promise you, it is possible. So check it out and send me a DM right now. Like if you're on your phone right now, just send me a DM and let me know what resonated deeply with you on this episode, right? What were you nodding away to? What did your heart maybe flutter a little when you heard, right? Which one of these facts made you feel a little free and made you feel relief? I would love to know. Just send me a DM right now. You can find me on Instagram at Life Coach Visa, LIFE Coach Visa. And remember to check out Crush Your Inner Critic on the show notes details. All right, I love you guys so much. Take care. Bye-bye.